Imagine opening a 1950s kitchen cabinet and finding not takeout menus, but a stack of well-worn Betty Crocker cookbooks, their pages splattered with gravy and penciled with notes only your grandmother could understand. Back then, dinner wasn't just about eating, it was about gathering the family, stretching every penny, and turning the simplest ingredients into pure magic. From bubbling casseroles that perfumed the whole neighborhood, to skillet suppers that came together in under 30 minutes, these recipes weren't just meals, they were lifelines. They kept working fathers fueled, children smiling, and mothers proud of what they could create with what little they had. Today, we're going to unlock the kitchen secrets of mid-century America, the hearty, heartwarming suppers that disappeared when TV dinners and drive-thrus took over. You'll see how creamy beef stroganoff could feed a family of 6 for under $2, how a can of tuna became the shining star of Sunday supper, and how even humble rice or noodles could be transformed into something worthy of the finest hotel dining room. These aren't just recipes, they're stories. Stories of post-war hope, church socials, potluck pride, and neighbors swapping casseroles over backyard fences. And if you think you know comfort food, wait until you meet the meals that once defined it. So tie on your apron, step into the past, and get ready, because we're about to relive the golden era of American home cooking, starting with 10 dishes that prove the best recipes aren't in restaurants, but in the faded pages of old cookbooks. What made this creamy beef dish the crown jewel of weeknight dinners across America? Picture it, 1955, in Betty Crocker's test kitchen in Minneapolis. They've just cracked the secret to bringing restaurant-quality stroganoff into the average American kitchen, no fancy chef required. Tender strips of beef sizzle in a pat of butter, filling the air with that unmistakable aroma. Sliced mushrooms join the party, onions caramelize until golden, and then, the magic, a velvety sauce of sour cream and broth that ties it all together. The brilliance? It all happened in one skillet, sparing busy homemakers from a mountain of dishes after a long day. In the post-war years, this dish felt like luxury on a budget. Husbands swore it tasted just like the fancy hotel version, while wives knew it cost less than $2 to feed the whole family. Even the pickiest kids cleaned their plates when stroganoff was on the table. Today, you might pay $18 for it at a chain restaurant, but back then, Mama's skillet reigned supreme. And if you're loving these forgotten recipes as much as we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel right now, because we've got dozens more dishes coming straight from the golden age of American cooking. You won't want to miss the next one. Tuna Noodle Supreme. Who knew a humble can of tuna could become the shining star of Sunday supper? Step into 1958, and you'll find kitchens across America filled with the scent of this bubbling masterpiece. Wide egg noodles, solid white tuna, cream of mushroom soup, and frozen peas, all crowned with a golden crust of buttered breadcrumbs. The secret? Betty Crocker's clever trick of adding a splash of lemon juice before baking. That little burst of brightness made every bite taste fresh and vibrant, even in the middle of winter. Housewives cooked the noodles just shy of done, mixed everything in a buttered casserole dish, then baked it until the edges turned crisp while the center stayed creamy. This was the recipe that Mrs. Henderson, down on Maple Street, swore had saved her marriage. Her husband stopped grumbling about fish for dinner and started asking for seconds. The kids loved it too, because that crunchy topping made every forkful irresistible. Back then, this family feast cost less than $1.50 and fed 8 people. Today, you'd pay at least $15 for something similar in a restaurant, and it probably wouldn't taste half as comforting. If you want to keep discovering recipes just like this, the kind that brought families together and made every bite a memory, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we uncover the next forgotten classic. Swedish meatballs in gravy. How did a humble Scandinavian comfort food become America's favorite party dish? Step into 1954, where Betty Crocker's cookbook turned Swedish immigrants' cherished meatballs into the talk of every church social. Ground beef blended with breadcrumbs soaked in milk, finely chopped onions, and just a whisper of nutmeg. That subtle spice made all the difference. The magic began in the shaping, each meatball rolled by hand, then seared in a hot skillet until a perfect golden crust formed. But the true showstopper was the gravy, rich beef broth swirled with sour cream, coating every meatball in a sauce as smooth as velvet. Sister Mary Catherine at St. Paul's Lutheran served these at every community gathering, and folks lined up around the block just for a second helping. They were spooned over buttered noodles or mashed potatoes, soaking up every last drop of that creamy goodness. In the 1950s, this dish was both practical and elegant, the kind of recipe that could turn a Tuesday night into a special occasion. Today, it's often reimagined in trendy restaurants, but back then, the real magic was found in home kitchens. If these stories make you hungry for more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because the next dish on our list is pure royalty, served right out of a puff pastry shell. Chicken à la king in pastry shells. What made this creamy chicken dish feel like royalty on an ordinary American dinner table? Step into 1952 and watch a clever homemaker transform yesterday's leftover chicken into something worthy of the Ritz. Diced chicken breast mingled with colorful bell peppers, tender mushrooms, and sweet green peas, all bathed in a velvety white sauce made from scratch. But the true magic? Those golden puff pastry shells. Betty Crocker's method made them possible in a home oven, turning a humble supper into a showpiece. Mama would ladle the creamy mixture right into the warm, flaky shells, and suddenly the whole family felt like they were dining in a grand hotel. The seasoning was subtle yet genius, just a pinch of paprika for warmth and a splash of sherry to elevate the flavors. Even the Methodist church ladies called it restaurant fancy when Mrs. Thompson brought it to the potluck dinner. In a time when presentation mattered as much as taste, this dish proved that elegance didn't require extravagance. It simply needed a good recipe, a warm oven, and a little creative flair. Pork chops in mushroom rice. Who knew pork chops and rice could create such perfect harmony on a single plate? Picture Betty Crocker's test kitchen in 1956, where they discovered that baking everything together could unlock flavors no one expected. Thick, bone-in pork chops, seasoned simply with salt and pepper, were laid over a bed of long-grain rice mixed with cream of mushroom soup and finely diced onions. The genius was in the timing, as the pork slowly roasted, its juices soaked deep into the rice, creating a savory base that needed no extra seasoning. Covered tightly with foil, it baked for over an hour, the steam keeping the chops tender and the rice unbelievably rich. When the foil came off, the pork was so soft it nearly fell off the bone, and the rice carried a depth of flavor you couldn't achieve cooking them separately. This was the kind of meal that filled both the stomach and the soul. Mr. Johnson from the hardware store swore his wife's version could make a grown man tear up, and neighbors often just happened to stop by when they caught the aroma drifting down the block. In the days before takeout and microwaves, this wasn't just dinner, it was a quiet kind of magic that only came from patience, love, and a well-worn casserole dish. Chop suey American style. What happened when mid-century America decided to bring a taste of the Far East right to its own dinner tables? In 1954, Betty Crocker introduced a recipe that was exotic enough to feel adventurous, yet simple enough for the average homemaker to make on a Tuesday night: chop suey, American style. Forget the takeout box. This version began with ground beef sizzling in a heavy skillet, the scent of onions mingling in the air. In went crisp celery and tender bean sprouts, their freshness a bright contrast to the rich meat. The sauce was a humble mixture of soy sauce, beef broth, and just a splash of Worcestershire, a surprising twist that deepened the flavor in ways even Betty's test kitchen didn't expect. It wasn't about authenticity, it was about accessibility. At a time when international travel was rare and Chinese restaurants weren't found on every corner, this dish brought a hint of the world to the neighborhood table. Served over steaming white rice or those delightfully crunchy chow mein noodles, it became a weeknight staple for families wanting something different without straying too far from the familiar. Mrs. Chen, who ran the corner market, often laughed that American families make it better than some Chinese restaurants because they weren't afraid to toss in extra vegetables. And she wasn't wrong. Mid-century homemakers happily raided their pantries for water chestnuts, green peppers, or whatever produce needed using up. The beauty of American-style chop suey was that it felt worldly while still being rooted in small-town practicality. It was colorful, savory, and just unusual enough to spark conversation at the table. In kitchens from coast to coast, this dish proved that a little curiosity and a good skillet could take you halfway around the world without leaving home. Ham and sweet potato bake. How did a humble root vegetable become the perfect partner for Sunday ham? In 1957, Betty Crocker's test kitchen unveiled a recipe that felt like a warm embrace from the moment it went into the oven: ham and sweet potato bake. It was the kind of dish that made the whole house smell like a holiday, even if it was just an ordinary weeknight. Thick slices of leftover baked ham were layered over wedges of sweet potatoes, their deep orange color promising natural sweetness. A glaze of brown sugar, butter, and a touch of apple cider vinegar was poured over the top, creating a sweet and savory magic that thickened as it baked. Some homemakers swore by adding a pinch of cinnamon or nutmeg, letting the warm spices mingle with the ham's smoky aroma. In the 1950s, this wasn't just about taste, it was about thrift. Leftover ham from Sunday dinner didn't go to waste. Sweet potatoes were cheap, filling, and stored well through the winter months. Together, they created a hearty casserole that could feed a family without stretching the budget. Mrs. Wilkins from Pine Street always brought this dish to church potlucks, and it never failed to disappear first. She claimed the secret was basting the potatoes halfway through baking, ensuring each slice soaked up the glossy glaze. When it came out of the oven, the edges of the ham had caramelized, the sweet potatoes were tender but not mushy, and the sauce clung like syrup to every bite. Served with nothing more than a green salad or a slice of cornbread, ham and sweet potato bake was proof that simple ingredients could deliver the kind of satisfaction no fancy restaurant could match. It was comfort food in its purest form, sweet, smoky, and steeped in memory. Salmon loaf with egg sauce. How did canned salmon, a pantry staple in post-war America, become the centerpiece of an elegant dinner? In 1953, Betty Crocker's salmon loaf with egg sauce was the answer for homemakers who wanted something company fancy without spending a fortune. This dish brought a touch of coastal charm to kitchens hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean. The loaf began with flaked canned salmon, its rich, briny flavor balanced by soft breadcrumbs soaked in milk. Finely chopped celery and onion added a gentle crunch, while beaten eggs held everything together. Some cooks slipped in a squeeze of lemon juice to brighten the flavor, or a pinch of paprika for color. The mixture was packed into a loaf pan, then baked until the kitchen smelled like Sunday dinner. But the real showstopper was the egg sauce. Betty's method called for a silky white sauce, butter, flour, and milk whisked to creamy perfection, enriched with chopped hard-boiled eggs. This topping added both elegance and substance, turning a simple salmon loaf into something worthy of the good china. In the 1950s, this was a recipe of resourcefulness. Canned salmon was affordable, shelf-stable, and packed with protein, making it ideal for busy families. It allowed inland households to enjoy a seafood night without worrying about freshness or cost. Mrs. Carter from Oakwood Avenue swore by serving it with buttered peas and parsleyed potatoes, saying it made the plate look like a magazine cover. At church luncheons, slices of salmon loaf topped with that velvety egg sauce drew admiring glances and second helpings. Today, salmon loaf has almost vanished from American tables, but in its heyday, it was the perfect balance of thrift and sophistication. Every bite carried the flavor of home, no matter how far you lived from the sea. Macaroni and cheese deluxe. How did a humble pot of macaroni turn into a dish worthy of a Sunday dinner table? In 1958, Betty Crocker's Macaroni and Cheese Deluxe took America's favorite comfort food and dressed it up for company. This wasn't the quick stovetop version we know today. This was baked, golden, and absolutely indulgent. It began with tender elbow macaroni, cooked just shy of done so it could soak up flavor in the oven. The sauce was pure magic, real cheddar cheese melted into a silky bechamel, a blend of butter, flour, and milk whisked until perfectly smooth. Betty's trick was adding a pinch of dry mustard, giving the cheese a richer, sharper bite. Some homemakers even stirred in a splash of evaporated milk for extra creaminess. Once the pasta was coated in that luscious sauce, it was layered in a buttered casserole dish. But here's where the deluxe came in: cubes of baked ham or bits of crispy bacon tucked between layers, plus a sprinkle of buttered breadcrumbs on top. The casserole baked until the cheese bubbled at the edges and the topping turned a beautiful, toasty brown. In an era when meat was expensive and families stretched ingredients, this recipe delivered satisfaction without breaking the budget. A little ham could flavor an entire pan, and a block of cheddar went further when combined with macaroni. Mrs. Fields, the elementary school secretary, made hers every Friday night for her 3 boys. She said it was the only dinner they'd stop wrestling for. At church potlucks, macaroni and cheese deluxe was the first dish to disappear, leaving only the warm, cheesy aroma behind. Today's boxed versions can't touch the richness of this 1950s classic, a dish that proved even the simplest ingredients could feel like a celebration.